Wow, hi everybody. Yeah, this video had to be made. It literally had to be made. The third video that I came out on my YouTube series where I just like started talking on the microphone, started using my PlayStation to record gameplay and push out videos to like hype up certain games like, Elden Ring, Night Rain, Monster Hunter. And then I mistakenly, you know, a little bit of backstory. So, Marathon to me was interesting because I completely missed the original series, and to me, it seems too foreign to try because it's like, okay, it's a game in the vein of Doom, 2D sprites, exclusively made for Mac. It has mouse control, which is pretty nice. And the main draw of it, besides its like intricate level design and like the technology, which is like a step above like I wouldn't say Doom Quake ish. It has its interesting like quirks and mechanics to it, but it's more or less like of the time, those games of the time, like Power Slave basically. So the storyline behind Marathon, however, is extremely intricate, like especially for its time. Like you play as a generic, nameless protagonist, but you find out later on that he has a backstory that is quite integral to the whole, you know, series, if you will. Because it's like it's touched on in the first one, and then in the second one and third one, it's more brought up and like fleshed out, like your role in the game. Which is why like me seeing the return of like cyborgs in the game is like okay, cool. At least they're following suit with how the game ended. In either in 2 or Infinity, depending on who you ask. Now, this is like some straight up nerd stuff. Like, I tried my best to follow the whole storyline of Marathon, and it's like the gist of it is when humans build gigantic AI robots and they have sentience, they can go crazy, which is called rampancy. And yeah, they do erratic things. They attack people. They're can kill people. They've done that in the past. The whole dynamic between Tycho and Durandal. In fact, the second game is called Durandal, Marathon 2 Durandal, which is like just two AIs just fighting it out with each other. So it's pretty interesting to see how you go from this and I couldn't make a script for this video because it's like I'm just gonna rip it in half because I spent all this time trying to defend these people, trying to say, hey, you know what? Give it a chance. It might be good. These are the guys who made Halo. Who knows? Maybe they can like pull a rabbit out of their hat. And then like at the same time, I'm like maybe they can do something with VR headsets. They can do something with like split screen multiplayer. And now I just don't care anymore. I do not, absolutely do not care anymore because it's one of those things where being nice and being optimistic hurts you in the end. Case in point, the Nintendo Switch. I'm running my mouth saying that the Nintendo Switch is gonna run Grand Theft Auto 6. Wow, man. In what world did I imagine that? Like me picking up this like goofy ass Nintendo controller and playing like, probably gonna be the number one game for like a while, on the Nintendo console. But I'm like thinking to myself, like, why would you increase the price of the console by so much? And later on, they're like, they backtrack. They said, oh, it's just an anti-scalping tactic. It's this, it's that. But like the whole bricking of the system is permanent. Like, so you buy these systems at a premium cost versus, especially versus the Japan only version, which is just like three something on release too. So it's gonna go down in price eventually too, which is hilarious. It's like the Japanese people speaking people basically get to buy the exact same console that they did before, except better performance and everything, and the cost is like pushed on the international market. So like yeah, that's a pretty interesting business tactic because technically speaking, Nintendo Switch was the most successful within Japan. So yeah, that's a cool thing for them to do, but unfortunately, it just means for the rest of us, like it's a game console for kids. It's even worse. Like, see, a kid would have, you know, like games made for them and catered for them. Like I don't know if like, well, yeah, the cost of everything's going up, but like to ask kids to pay more for their games, it's a little bleak. It's too much money, too much dinero. But that's what Nintendo is about now. They don't care about you, and like the optimism that I think people have had, like myself, was was a fail. It's a failure. You have so much optimism for developers, for console makers, for everything, and it all falls apart, right? And the reason why I think people have this optimism, well, at least myself, is that sometimes when life doesn't really show you any form of reprieve, you find, you know, like a kind of like calling and just like, oh baby, if I like play the lottery and just put all my eggs in this one basket, it'll work. Yeah, that kind of behavior where it's not really that constructive towards anything, and all it does is, you know, illustrate, you know, just how bad things have gotten. Like, uh, let me talk a bit about Doom, even though like I don't know if it's a good or a bad game, but like from my previous experience with it. So I really looked forward to Doom 2016, right? It was one of those games I'm like, oh my god, I can't wait to play it. You know, it's next gen. You know, at the time I only had a PS3. You know what I mean? Like it was just like out there, just like, you know, floating, right? When I eventually got a hold of it, it was like for super cheap too. Like it was just, I think it sold for like $4 or $5 on sale just one time. And I think I bought it like 2020, 2021 or something like that. Like pretty late. So it was around for a while. Yeah, the game blew me away. Like the graphics, everything about it, it just it's amazing. Like I can't believe that not only did they bring the series back, but they brought it back with such finesse, you know? Like every single thing about that game has like layers to it, like, you know, the weapon upgrades, you know, the enemy behaviors. And when you set the difficulties to the higher settings, and like, you know, it's just, I wouldn't say it's the way the game is meant to be played, but like the care and attention to detail that the developers put into the game to make it not only that challenging but that deep for a game where you're just running around shooting basically similar looking monsters. Although like the enemy variety in that game is, you know, amazing, right? So then the sequel comes out and I look at it and I'm like, graphics look amazing, but what's up with all this jumping and like, you know, climbing up stuff, and it just seems so disconnected from like the game that was previous to it. And then I realized that okay, so all of this was done to kind of get rid of backtracking, if you will. I don't know if that's 100% the case, but I see like a lot of self-contained arenas and then like just platforming in between. It's not so much the hallway corridor or like, you know, secret level type of thing that, you know, the older games had, but like it still looked good. And then the other thing that most people complained about was like the ammo, like, or lack thereof, and the necessity to switch from weapon to weapon over and over again. And just watching it like gives me a seizure because I'm just like, he's throwing the ice grenade, he's using the chainsaw, he's using the shotgun, he's using the, you know, like, I don't know, that repeater thingy, you know, and it just keeps switching guns to the point where I don't like that game. You know, like the way I play these games, like this one right now, I'm playing Overload. Like I'll get a weapon that I like or like whatever, and if I run low on ammo, then I'll switch to a next weapon or whatever. Or if I just run out of ammo, like it'll automatically switch for me. Because it's like, and I'm like the same way in Devil May Cry, which is to a fault because I ruined this style meter. But like, I just stick with one weapon, and I don't like really like to switch. But that's just my personal like style on playing games. So like I couldn't really jive too much with Doom Eternal, and then I see Doom Dark Ages, right? I was looking forward to it. Like, okay, so it's gonna be a game where Maybe it's more melee focused or, whatever. Okay, so it's more of the same, except it got rid of all of the, movement, like options, booms, whatever you can get in the other games with like double jump and like whatever. I think you can pull your stuff up ledges. I don't know. I haven't really looked into it, but what I've seen was like appalling. So I watched the video review by G Man Lives. Yeah, cool guy. Go watch his channel for like pretty much every single first person shooter there is. Him and Civi are like, my go-to for like first person shooters because it's like as much as a series as a genre of games that I like to play first person shooters, like inevitably, like if it's not something more to it, like overload, you're flying a ship and you're like in zero gravity, and you can move more than just like left and right. You can go up and down, lateral movement. Like it doesn't keep my attention for too long because it's maybe I've been burnt out from playing too many of these games, too many of these types of games. You know what to expect. Go around shooting people and stuff. But yeah, marathon. I previously said give it a chance, but now I'm going to say something completely contradictory to that. Do not give it a chance. And let me explain why. You're going to tell me that a team that has made like so many games like out of Destiny, right? So like, Destiny add-ons and all that stuff, right? Wouldn't have, the talent or the money, right? They could just hire someone maybe on contract, keep it cheap, and then this person, just steals artwork literally from this lady online, and it's such a letdown to me because okay, so you're telling me that the graphic style isn't even yours, and people were complaining about it. Like, it's funny because okay, I'm gonna sound sexist by saying this, but with whatever, it's a girl that the Bungie team stole it from. So it makes sense for like, it's ought to be like appealing to like men. It's not masculine or whatever. See a guy rocking black lipstick and shit. And I'm like, oh, so it's made by a girl then. Okay, cool. Right? I like black lipstick. I personally like to wear it. I'm like, okay, fine. That's just my, choice. Right? And that's not necessarily why I gave it a chance, although it did help. Right? But like, it inevitably like made me realize that, yeah, let me give you an example, right? Like, I'm a big fan, and this is gonna sound dumb, of Slave Zero. It's just a dumb game that came out for both the Dreamcast and PC, but the Dreamcast version was just god awful. Well, but the PC version is pretty decent. Like, it's not great, but the sound effects are amazing. So, you know, and like the enemy variety is like top notch in my opinion. Right? Like it's one of those games where you can play from start to finish and enjoy it thoroughly. Although it has its like glitches, whatever, that kind of stuff in those kinds of games. And recently, well, not too recently, like a while back, maybe like a year, it had a re-release of the series, like a prequel, but it was more of a side scroller, like a 2.5D side scroller, where you're just like fighting waves of enemies, like a beat 'em up basically. And the artist who designed most of the stuff is a personal like favorite artist of mine, Francine Bridges, and like her art is just it's very Evangelion meets I guess Geiger, if you will. It's truly inspired artwork, and I bring this up because it's like the game Slave Zero X, like this is sequel. I mean prequel, sorry. Uses like it heavily uses the boss characters, enemy backgrounds, enemy characters themselves, even the main character. It's all well done. It's all well like created, and that's why even though it's a game with its problems and it's like very simplistic, kind of action beat 'em up type of game, single player, unfortunately. um, like what I mean, like a game like that, you'll probably have more fun if you had like two players, running around playing a game like that. But like that is almost the antithesis of Marathon. Like Marathon is an artist that like I don't really know her, and it's more or less like, yeah, we made this game. If you don't like it, you're a sexist. And it's such a weird cop out because they didn't even make the game themselves. And you see this a lot with like leftists and socialists. Like they don't necessarily believe in the causes that they're fighting for. It's like the transparency. Like I touched on this on my previous video. Like you get like rich people who benefit from poor people fighting, for their causes, right? And they ultimately have to pay the price. While the rich people get to say, "Oh, look what happened to those poor freedom fighters. Those evil, like, enemy forces took their lives and stuff." And like it's such a like obvious ploy of propaganda to say, "Hey, just because you can't like go out and like, do bad things like commit murder, theft, whatever, right? Doesn't mean like you can't endorse those kinds of things." And like I think, and I bring it up a lot, but I think the October 7th attack is possibly like the key indicator as to why people feel like embellished as to do whatever they want, because you have something that happened that's so horrible. Like I'm pretty sure like deep down inside everybody agrees with the fact that it shouldn't have happened, but the fact that it happened, and not only was it downplayed, but also largely, ignored in favor of a false narrative, which is genocide by the Jews, rather than the Jews are desperately trying to get their prisoners back and are given pretty much every excuse imaginable. Yeah. And now we have like an entire world of people who see, hey, look, if you go and you do bad things, but there's enough people to like, cheer you on and like, have your side, you can get away with it. And the Nintendo, Marathon, Xbox, PlayStation, everybody like increasing the money on everything. It's just the end result of this. And it's mostly, I think, contempt of young people. Like, and it's not necessarily their fault. If you really think about it, like percentage wise, I'd probably think like maybe like a lot of young people use TikTok. And I know, like, yeah, I'm an old person. I shouldn't be talking about this shit, but like, hear me out, right? Like, but percentage wise, of said young people, maybe 20, 30% are using it like extensively. So that's a huge overlap. So you got like 70% of like young people with like, this judgment of like, oh, you're just this empty, vapid loser who like, goes on their phone or device and like, has no social skills or whatever. Meanwhile, yeah, that does line up with like a lot of people that they grew up with, but it doesn't really describe them, and then they get judged accordingly. And they want to go buy a game console, costs more. Like, why? Inflation. No, it's not. It's because you have old streamers my age and older, Hassan's age, who have the money to buy and do things that you want to do, but you can't because they're preventing you. Just because companies can make an extra buck off of you. And it's also really like I think like I watched this guy. I subscribed to him. His name is Nintendi, and he's really a nice guy. He's into his Nintendo. He's very elaborate with his videos. Go watch him. I'm gonna actually hashtag both these guys, and then like whatever. I'll do that. But what I'm trying to get at is like watching an optimistic or like a positive Nintendo fan. Mind you, he's taken a strong stance against the whole Switch 2 situation, but like he's really optimistic about the Nintendo franchise, and like I don't know how to tell him. Like ever since N64, I knew this was gonna go downhill. I knew it was gonna be like a bust. So yeah, I mean. I hope I'm right and like we get some quality games on that console, but like let's be fair, man. Like we're living in a time where people are asking for more just for the sake of, having more, not necessarily because they want or need it. So I guess optimism should be taken with a grain of salt. And I gotta watch my mouth because sometimes I curse myself so hard. So hard. Take it easy.